Hello there, I'm the Serial Plagiarist, and today I wanted to look at a video that is quite possibly the most out-of-touch defense of Disney Star Wars ever. I wasn't sure if I wanted to make this video because I'm probably going after such an easy target, but at the same time, I wanted to encourage anyone who defends the corporate slop to be more aware of all the discussion around Star Wars, and to stop making cliche arguments, because I want to feel like Disney defenders actually have some integrity. But their arguments so completely missed the point, or didn't hear the point at all, that I gotta step in. So the video in question is literally called How Disney Saved Star Wars, and why fans should appreciate it. No thanks, buddy, but let's see how he does.
A lot of people will tell you that Disney ruined Star Wars.
Correct!
Honestly, I disagree. I think Disney saved Star Wars. And if you give me a couple minutes, I'm going to tell you why.
Take all the time you need.
Whether you love the sequels, hate them, or fall somewhere in between, I think we can all agree that Star Wars is in a very different place than it was a little over a decade ago.
Okay, so far, I feel like this is the most generic persuasive piece ever. The whole different from what it was sentence almost makes me suspect that this was written with ChatGPT. Case in point, it's uninspired. You know what? Scratch that. ChatGPT is way more competent.
Welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, I'm Patrick, dad of Xander, and I love Star Wars.
Yeah, I'm sure we all love Star Wars, buddy. I think I'm gonna skip over this part until he gets back to the point of his video.
Alright, let's rewind to 2010. Things on the Star Wars front were pretty quiet. George Lucas made it clear that he was done making Star Wars movies after the prequels.
So a bunch of other authors took to writing Star Wars content. I mean, say what you will about The Force Unleashed 2, or at least the mainstream version. The Nintendo Wii version was actually pretty good, and the novelization was pretty good as well. Come to think of it, George Lucas ceasing to make Star Wars movies meant very little to the actual dedicated fan, because there was plenty to hold you over.
The Clone Wars animated series was keeping the hardcore fans happy.
Define what the hardcore fan is, because when I think of hardcore fans, especially at the time, they would have been incredibly distraught that the Clone Wars completely wasted their time reading the Cestus Deception, or Labyrinth of Evil, or literally anything else. From what I understand, the Clone Wars was a show that initially failed to make its money back, and was really only seen by kids tuning into Cartoon Network. I also think it's pathetic that you have to bring up the Clone Wars, because it's literally probably the first thing outside the movies that people will actually see.
But even that was winding down and coming to an end. And beyond a few video games, books, comics, there really wasn't much new Star Wars coming.
And that's the problem with your argument. The video games, books, and comics were literally what was sustaining Star Wars. And by just brushing them off because it wasn't a new movie or television show, you show a lack of integrity. This is literally basically like saying there wasn't any new Star Wars content because they existed in a medium I wasn't going to bother to experience. Is it really that hard to at least try to pick up a book or a comic book? You are literally acknowledging that they had plenty to hold you over, and then claiming there was nothing to hold you over. Even if we ignore those mediums, that's not even true, because George Lucas was developing Star Wars Underworld, and considering a bunch of other television spin-offs.
It was almost starting to feel like something you loved from the past, not something that was continuing to grow.
Again, not correct. There was plenty to sustain everyone, if they were actually dedicated fans.
It wasn't dead, but it certainly wasn't thriving.
Hard disagree, for the reasons I listed earlier.
But then, Disney stepped in. Love them or hate them, they did something bold. They brought Star Wars back to the mainstream.
Like that's any sort of achievement. Any new theatrical Star Wars movie, regardless of quality, would have done that.
The Force Awakens wasn't just a movie, it was a global event. Over $2 billion at the box office. People lined up outside their movie theaters at midnight again. Star Wars felt huge.
Again, it would have done well regardless. And tell me you didn't just use the "look at how much money it made" argument. And while we're on topic, I have to point out that The Force Awakens did not sustain long-term success. People eventually saw the shallowness of the film for what it was, and opinion has only grown more negative around it. If you actually analyze why, it's because that sense of potential didn't actually mean anything. J.J. Abrams treated The Force Awakens like the pilot to a shitty TV show, in which he baited you with unanswered questions to make you go nuts, but at the end of the day, there was nothing actually there. It was a cheap-ass way to engage people, and the audience felt cheated. Simply put, The Force Awakens had the quality of a 2-hour trailer for the next movie. That realization lost The Force Awakens so much support, and why it's been passed off as a shallow film that baited you, because that's what it was. It was a corporately catered product that could never stand the test of time. And it didn't. The Force Awakens as it was designed could never be a timeless movie, because it was built to be reactive to the audience at the time, and never have any grander, larger meaning. So in short, The Force Awakens was a short-term success, and its reputation literally relied on its follow-ups being good, and they weren't.
Next up came Rogue One. This movie was a huge creative risk, but it paid off. They made a darker, more grounded Star Wars movies that many fans to this day claim is their favorite Star Wars.
People also say The Last Jedi is their favorite, so I don't judge any of this based on simple baseline opinions, because I care about the whys and hows.
But Disney didn't stop at movies. With the launch of their new streaming platform, Disney+,
you gotta love how he shifts attention away from the movies, because he knows it's better to bring up The Mandalorian than it is to bring up what came before then. The animosity towards Disney Star Wars, and people ripping on them after their magic trick was exposed for what it was. Their novels and comics were also pretty bad too.
They launched the first live-action Star Wars television show, The Mandalorian. And once again, Star Wars fans raved about the new Star Wars they were getting.
Yeah, again, The Mandalorian turned out to be a short-term success, as the bait of Boba Fett and Season 3 of The Mandalorian fucking bombed. I think it's kind of funny how with Disney Star Wars, it took the third movie for fans to turn against Disney after finding some initial success, and with the television shows, it was the exact same. The buzz around The Mandalorian was it being the first live-action Star Wars show, after Underworld got canned, and also the illusion like it was any sort of remarkable feat, with Disney having infinitely larger pockets than George Lucas. It's also unsurprising that people eventually came to see The Mandalorian Season 1 and 2 for what they were. A completely filler-ridden waste of time meant to get you to tune in next time, because eventually you'll get to see all the awesome stuff. What a complete joke.
And Grogu, or as he was known at the time, Baby Yoda, became a worldwide phenomenon.
Too bad there was very little to the character beyond the gimmick. Seriously, Grogu was a walking advertisement for plushies, and it wasn't subtle about it either.
Suddenly, Star Wars wasn't just back, it was bigger than ever.
Both examples, with the movies and shows, were very short-term successes. So I don't know how you can claim this.
And you know what maybe the most important thing about all of this was? An entirely new generation fell in love with Star Wars.
I was literally 13 when The Force Awakens came out. I was the exact demographic for that movie, and I grew to hate it as much as everyone else. Aside from myself, it seems universally, aside from complete sellouts like Star Wars Explained, that people have a lack of interest towards Star Wars, that it's past its prime. So I seriously doubt the credibility of the idea that a significant amount of kids fell in love with Star Wars. The 10-year deadline for The Force Awakens is nearly up, and it's hated more than ever before. Where are the reinforcements exactly of kids saying they love the sequel so much? I remember talking about this years ago, and it's just as untrue as it was back then. The idea that a new generation grew up loving this corporate slop has insufficient evidence.
There are kids who grew up with Rey, Finn, Poe.
I doubt that.
And those kids see them in the same light that I see Han, Luke, Leia.
Rey, Finn, and Poe weren't even a proper trio. Given Rey and Poe didn't even meet until the fucking end of The Last Jedi, the second movie in the trilogy. So again, I find this hard to believe.
Families sat down together to watch The Mandalorian every single week.
Maybe for the first 2 seasons, but again, short-term success at best.
Star Wars wasn't just a nostalgic memory from the past. It's alive, it's growing.
Given all the recent Star Wars shows seem to be flops in viewership and ratings, I doubt that.
And it's being passed down to new fans.
Screw all the old fans, in other words. Anyone who's attached to Disney Star Wars gets all the special treatment. But if you don't like this shift, and would like something that's a little more like how things used to be run, too bad. The fact that they abandoned the expanded universe, which is a whole demographic, and refused to make any more of it, and forced people to transition to the new shitty books, that was extremely alienating.
Now, I'm not going to pretend that Disney Star Wars has been perfect. The sequel trilogy divided the fan base a little bit.
Understatement of the century. It literally got fans to outright quit Star Wars. I don't even know why I'm still here. Although it probably has something to do with promoting the older, better content, and not just the movies and TV shows.
Solo, a Star Wars story, underperformed.
Yeah, and it was the most delusional way Disney thought they were actually gonna make money. Like, they seriously overestimated how popular Han Solo actually was when it came to legacy characters, because he seems to be like a stereotypical example of an OT fanatic's favorite character. But to any actual dedicated Star Wars fan, there's more interesting characters to make a movie on.
But let's be honest, Star Wars has always been messy. People today seem to forget how controversial the prequel trilogy was.
Ugh, not this again.
And that actors were bullied because fans didn't get what they wanted in their minds.
Okay, about prequel hate, it was overblown and insincere. There were a multitude of myths people made up about the prequels and George Lucas that only further enforced the hate that they got. George Lucas was surrounded by yes men. Not really. Star Wars was saved in the edit. Yeah, like every other movie in existence. What do you think deleted scenes are? Basically, people made up stories about the behind-the-scenes production of the prequels to justify their hatred for them, and it was beyond dishonest. I have dedicated my channel to debunking these myths, and to point out that there were plenty that didn't make sense, and to point out how poorly prequel hate has aged. Like, think about it. You're more likely to hate a movie if you believe the guy who made it didn't care about making a good movie. And that's the thing about prequel hate. It was insincere. The most accurate narrative if you hated the prequels was that George Lucas was left on his own to do everything, considering he asked numerous directors to help him with the prequels, and they all turned him down. Point is, when the criticisms are overlapped with factual misconceptions and flat-out myths, it's questionable how genuine prequel hate really was. And it's something we all talk about today, when looking back at the prequels and discussing their reception back then. And when you point out that dedicated Star Wars fans would have been able to get over the prequels pretty quickly with all the other shit they were getting, while the hardcore prequel haters probably couldn't pick up a Star Wars children's book to save their lives, it's very revealing. In comparison, the sequels are hated for more legitimate reasons. They abandoned George Lucas's vision and didn't have an adequate replacement. They are a cheap remake of movies we've seen already, and other points that show that the sequels were made to make money over having artistic expression and passion. And the more I hear about the behind-the-scenes history of the sequels, the more I grow to despise them. Because Disney really screwed the pooch. Okay, moving on.
Even George Lucas decided he was done making Star Wars because of the hate the prequels got.
I'm not going to repeat myself here.
The point is, whether you love the sequel trilogy, hate it, or you're falling somewhere in between, Disney has made sure that Star Wars stays alive.
Ha! Kathleen Kennedy has literally turned Star Wars into her very own whorehouse, and the franchise has had a sharp decline in regards to interest. The High Republic novels are selling very poorly from what I hear, and most of the Disney Plus shows are failures.
And that has given them a chance to keep building these stories.
Calling them stories is extremely generous.
And to keep dreaming in this galaxy far, far away. Clearly, I fall into the I love the sequels camp, but I'll never pretend they're perfect.
Yeah, with that sort of acknowledgement, you're never going to raise the bar for the sequels. That right there is the stamp of death when you're trying to make the case that something needs to be appreciated. We already had a version of what happened after Return of the Jedi, ever since the 90s. So Disney has done nothing special whatsoever. They made their own version, pretending it was the first, it sucked, and people are left to sort out the mess. I have to wonder how many sequel fans there would be if something like the Thrawn trilogy was a little more mainstream. I think this is important to point out that in an official capacity, Disney was not the first and they never were. It's just that people like to pretend Disney was the first, because it makes the sequels seem more special than they actually are. Like the story was untold and we had to wait 30 years for the return of Luke, Han, and Leia, when any actual fan already got that in the early 90s. It's insane how bad sequel defenses are, because they tend to be so lazy that they shrug off the books as some fuck-off stories nobody read so it doesn't matter. Seriously, there would be no defending the sequels if people actually had to put in the effort to acknowledge that this isn't the first attempt, and it was done decades ago.
But what I love most about Star Wars is that Star Wars is for everyone.
I'm really not sure Disney shares that mentality. As I've pointed out throughout my channel, they alienated the expanded universe fans by telling them to deal with the discontinuation of the books and instead forcing them to migrate to the newer, more inferior shit. They alienated prequel fans like me, given I'm yet to see a prequel-based story that actually does the prequels justice and isn't just based on the Clone Wars specifically, and all the retconny changes it made. They also haven't touched the Old Republic, aside from the remake that's probably going to be cancelled anyways. And the original trilogy is super streamlined and dumbed down, and it's led to a lot of people being upset, and righteously so. I also feel like Star Wars being for everyone completely misses the point. Not only have they put out inferior content, it's also not Star Wars either. It's a lose-lose situation.
Not every Star Wars project will be for you, but everyone can find a Star Wars project that is for them.
Disney has tried a lot of different shit and none of them have stuck. The sequels were a rushed, inconsistent mess. The Mandalorian was overrated as balls. The video games were barely coming out thanks to Disney's infinite wisdom in giving Electronic Arts of all companies the license. Like for real, good going Disney. The comics and novels were just bleh, and believe me, what I've read isn't compelling enough to make me read more of it, because there isn't even a foundation there. I think it's clear that they don't understand Star Wars, nor do they know how to write good stories. I feel like Star Wars is in a state where Disney puts in the bare minimum, and that's why everything has been so underwhelming. Star Wars is capable of a higher quality standard than what is coming out currently. And that's why I hate people acting like not every Star Wars story has to be perfect. Because it's like, wow dude, you're not going to get Star Wars back to its quality over quantity approach by accepting devalued Star Wars content.
And that's really what's important. Star Wars cannot go on without a new fan base, without bringing younger people in and letting them grow up with Star Wars.
Again, I'm yet to see any substantial evidence that the Disney shit has created new fans, given the decline Star Wars is currently on.
Disney has brought us so many amazing Star Wars projects and stories that we never would have gotten had they not made the purchase of Star Wars back in 2010.
Yeah, nah. I would have traded the few Disney shit I've liked to stop George Lucas from signing that contract. Also, a question. What about all the stuff Disney canned after the acquisition? Because there's a lot of stuff we didn't get because of the purchase. Star Wars 1313 is the prime example, and it's the perfect counterpoint, because people really would have liked to see the game come out, but Disney robbed us of it. as well as a million other things, and I can guarantee that they all would have been better than what Disney is currently putting out.
Great animated shows. Rebels, The Bad Batch.
You're fucking kidding me? Rebels and The Bad Batch fucking sucked, dude. And the general consensus universally seems to be that nobody is calling either their favorite Star Wars content, or even that it's highly remarkable. It's usually beaten out by other shit. I also think it goes to show how out of touch this guy is, because he has zero argument for people who hated either of those shows. He just assumes that we all liked those shows, and of course, Rebels and The Bad Batch have been criticized for being slop, so I don't know where he got that idea from. Again, it feels like I'm going after such an easy target here.
We got to see Ewan McGregor come back as Obi-Wan Kenobi, Hayden Christensen come back as Darth Vader, Anakin Skywalker.
You'd be hard-pressed to find any actual hardened prequel fan who liked that show. Not to mention the writers themselves admitted to their own negligence, such as disregarding continuity or forgetting crucial details about Revenge of the Sith, which explains why the show was so terrible. Seriously, Kenobi barely understood the demographic it was trying to appeal to by bringing back Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen. It felt like revisionism more than anything, and they thought prequel fans would be dumb enough to fall for it. I also really hate that when it comes to commenting on the Kenobi show, he specifically brings the casting up, as if anyone who hated the Kenobi show actually had a problem with those two coming back.
Right now, we are getting Andor in a 12-episode season 2.
Yawn. That show is a bad influence on Star Wars, and it's got the worst, most combative fans ever.
Without Disney, there would be none of this.
Sounds good to me. I'd rather none of that shit come out.
At the end of the day, they have given Star Wars so much. I don't love every decision they've made. Heck, I don't love every decision George Lucas made. But I can never express how grateful I am that Star Wars just didn't fade away with George Lucas.
It never would have faded away. George Lucas deciding not to make any more Star Wars movies doesn't mean Star Wars would just fuck off and die. So many treat it like that's the case, and it's dead wrong. Disney making a movie and it surging for the short term before people saw what they were doing and rebelled is nothing to write home about. Again, The Force Awakens and Disney Star Wars in general was a short-term success.
So what do you think? Did Disney save Star Wars? Or are you going to still tell me that Disney ruined Star Wars?
We both know the answer to that. And that about does it. So to sum up the problems with this video, it's incredibly out of touch, and it's clear this guy has not discussed or researched this topic very well. He assumes many things that are ultimately untrue or lack sufficient evidence. He ignores the expanded universe and its content, typical, and overall, this video is the product of some filthy casual who has no idea what a Juris Kaboth is. I responded to this video because this is practically the worst case scenario for how a Disney Shill defends Disney Star Wars. Not understanding the backlash, using the think about the kids excuse, bringing up prequel hate without recognizing the distinction and differences between it and Disney hate, and just having no clue what he's talking about. It's pathetic. This is the sort of thing I joke about a filthy casual saying to defend all of Disney Star Wars. But since it's not a joke, it's led to me having decreasing faith in Star Wars and its fan base. But anyways, that's my piece. I'm JJ Plagiarisms, and until next time, what are stories about mystery boxes?
Under the mountain, the golden